Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 8th weekly XYZ live stream. I'm here with David Hiscox, the editor and founder of XYZ News. Dave, welcome back to our weekly show.
Thanks very much, Matty. I've got to say, I've got a bone to pick with you this week.
Oh, really? Is it?
Yeah.
Is it? What bone's that?
Gee, get that ugly thing out of my face. It's to do with one of the videos. You said something which is I just can't stand by it. Like a lot of the time on the XYZ, people put stuff in and like we publish it, and I'm like, well, I don't always agree with that, but you know, free speech, you know.
Yeah.
Not so much free speech these days, but you know, like get it up there, let everybody argue about it. In your video, you did a great video about just what's happening to Australia and to do with free speech and like just like what's happening to our country. But you made a point, like you said, if you layer on Vegemite on your toast too thick, it leaves a bad taste in your mouth.
Yeah.
Do you call yourself an Australian?
What are you talking about?
There's no such thing as too thick Vegemite.
Oh, what is wrong with you, mate? You got to have a thin layer. That's the whole thing of it.
That's un-Australian.
Oh, no, I think you've maybe been drinking too much crappy wine over the years, because Vegemite tastes terrible if it's too thick. It's got to be a nice thin layer of Vegemite, so it's nice and not too strong, not too bad.
If it's not from corner to corner, like layered, like at least a millimeter thick, I can't taste it.
Oh, gross.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm all in favour of Vegemite over Marmite. But
Magnus, let Magnus sort this out.
Yeah, so Magnus is here. Yeah, good.
Yeah, and Magnus, do you think it's possible to make Vegemite too thick?
Look, I've got to say I'm a bit of a Vegemite fanatic on this. I'm probably an extremist, if you will. So, I mean, I don't think that it's necessarily bad having it too thin, but I mean, I'm not afraid at all to lay it on thick. So, yeah.
Wow, yeah. I'm outvoted.
You're outvoted, matey.
I'm Australian. I should deport myself.
The tribal council has spoken.
Yeah. Well, haven't you said, Matty, that democracy doesn't work? So you know.
It doesn't work. This is proof that democracy is completely wrong most of the time.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, Plato was right.
Do you know what we should send an edict out? This is how thick Vegemite is supposed to be. No thicker than 1 millimeter.
How about a fatwa?
Fatwa? Yeah.
Fatwas tend to be a little more persuasive, yeah.
Well, I reckon we could probably get a few Aussies on board here.
Yeah. Get the Australian Human Rights Commission onto it. They'll sort it out.
I think we should make Vegemite mandatory for all kids' lunches for the rest of eternity in the world.
I think that would solve a lot of Australia's problems.
Maybe we can actually get on this globalism bandwagon and actually support globalism so long as the world government makes Vegemite mandatory.
That sounds like imperialism to me. I'm quite happy with that.
Yeah, true. All right. We better get on to the topics of the day. Now, sorry. So, Dave, you wanted to talk about organising the culture war. So I think maybe we can probably talk about that one a little bit later,
sure.
Sort of near the end, because it's a good one to sort of close on. Sorry, who was that? Was that Magnus?
That was Magnus. Sorry. What is that? Do you mean just in general organising activism or organising countercultural movements in the culture war? Is that what's meant by that?
Yes, basically what you're doing, like organising real life rather than on the internet.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. So we can get onto that one later. First things first, let's start with Australia, because everyone who's watching this live stream and who's in this live stream almost certainly realises that Australia is the greatest planet in the universe. If there's any non-Australian watching this, I'm sorry, but Australia is better than your country, especially if you're from New Zealand. If you're from New Zealand, it's just no contest. Even Russell Crowe decided to become Australian. That's how crappy New Zealand is. That being said, so Peter Dutton came out and stated that he wants to bring in white South African farmers, which I support the move if the farmers actually want to take their land, take the offer up. I'm not 100% sure they'd actually take it up just yet, while they can still actually defend the land that is theirs by birthright. So it was good on Dutton for actually standing up and making a stand on this issue. But what I obviously it was very predictable, the reaction of the left, but I thought it just made me laugh when we've all come out and really just attacked him in the exact same way that they've always attacked him. And this time he's pretty much just said, nah, stuff ya, we're going to keep going with it. Tony Abbott came out and supported him today, I believe, and Malcolm Turnbull stood by him as well. So good on your lefties. You sort of shown, like, I think it's great the way that he stood up for this issue and made a point of it and hasn't backed down in the face of the Twitterati. So I just wanted to get your guys' thoughts on that as well.
Well, I'll go first, shall I?
Yep.
Well, yes. I mean, I think I do support this move, and it's interesting to note that Yasmin Abdel Magid, who's normally fatuous, but this time she's fatuous and completely delusional, it seems, because she took to Twitter saying that basically she was taking a very literalist approach, but if you will, but she said that we shouldn't consider whether or not refugees are good or fit for this country or compatible with this culture. We should just let in people completely indiscriminately, and regardless of that. But it seems like Pete Dutton, what he's trying to do is he's trying to actually set up a healthy immigration policy by stealth, effectively. Which I mean, I wish he were more open to say what is actually the truth about this, which is that certain cultures and certain people are more compatible with Australian culture than others. And if only he were able to say that openly, but unfortunately he's going to have to do it by stealth. But yes, I do support him.
Yeah, so I'll just say, David, I'm not sure what you're writing on then, but it's like, remember we were talking about Mr. Squiggle before the live stream started. It sounded like you were doing a bit of a Mr. Squiggle on a blackboard right there.
I'll take note of that, Matty. Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, I think yeah, he probably maybe is sort of hinting at that we want people who would fit into Australian culture a little bit better. Maybe they're going on the baby steps approach in that maybe we don't want to say this outright. We'll just test the waters and see how it goes, and then go and step it up from there. But it's good that at least someone in the mainstream is talking about this, and people in the mainstream media have been talking about South Africa as well. I would not on the ABC. Well, I don't know if they're talking about it on the ABC. I highly doubt it. I don't watch the ABC because for obvious reasons. I do watch Sky.
Well, two people are there.
There are a couple of people out there who watch the ABC. I don't know who they are. I know a few people who work for the ABC actually. I think they're actually if they are. I feel sorry for them, to be fair. So if you're ever watching this live stream, you know who you are. You can do a lot better. You're both smart blokes. So get a job somewhere else. Don't sell your soul to Satan just for a few clicks and views. So yeah, I think it's good policy, and it's good that we're finally sort of maybe getting back on track of potentially limiting immigration as well. But even if we're not going to limit immigration, we're at least going to focus on bringing people in who are actually able to fit in. So generally westernized people. So, I mean,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
We've spoken about the difference between civic and ethno-nationalism in the past. I mean, I'm not an ethno-nationalist, but I do understand that it is a fact that people from Western European nations are going to be more likely to fit into Australian culture. So that's just, that is a fact. So it's good that he's at least acknowledging that, and hopefully they can keep going down the path, like going down the same path. And yeah, Abdel Yasmin, whatever her name is, coming out. I mean, that was as predictable as anything. The left's reaction is how predictable can you get? He's a racist. He's this. You can't let white people in, and horrible things. And then the flat out lie that white people stole South African land. So I've been doing a bit of research and all that kind of thing. When white people first went to South Africa, I believe it was in the 15th century, there were no black tribes there. There was no black people there. There was archaeological evidence that black people had been there in the past, but there were no black people in South Africa when white people got there. So the idea that it's somehow land stolen off black people it's actually absurd. It's factually incorrect. And a lot of you know, the black people coming in. I don't know exactly what it is, but I believe that a lot of them were like fleeing fleeing persecution from other blacks. So
yeah, when the Dutch got there, like there were vast swathes of land which were completely unoccupied, and there were the Bushmen like out in the bush, and they were native, and there'd actually been a war like the Zulus had gone through and just wiped out entire populations, and so that's one of the reasons why there were so few people there. But there were parts which nobody had ever been to, and so a lot of the migration down to South Africa was because of the slave trade. They were getting away from the slavers. But you've got to also consider that like some of the main tribes in South Africa, some of the main black tribes, are descendants of the people who committed the genocides that happened before the Dutch got there. It's like when we think of the narrative, it's that flipped. Like that much is flipped, because like now the narrative is like, oh, we can't compensate the Boer farmers for their land because that would legitimize the original theft of that land. And like we're talking in a lot of the cases, like not all of the cases, but a lot of the case, this is land which was completely unoccupied.
Yeah. So did you want to add anything to that, Magnus?
Well, not to the history of it, but I just think it's interesting to note that in the criticisms of this potential policy that Peter Dutton has announced, there doesn't really seem to be any sympathy coming from like Richard Di Natale or Sarah Hanson-Young. It's just all bad according to them. There's no sort of like no sort of recognition that something at least should be done. They just sort of seem to just smear the whole process. At least that's what it seems like to me.
Yeah. Even Julie Bishop has like sort of, she's gone against Abbott and she's gone against Dutton, and she said that Australia's immigration, like a refugee policy, should remain non-discriminatory.
Well, I mean, non-discriminatory refugee policy is like a recipe for absolute disaster. The fact is, and I'll be willing to say what others might not be willing to say, but need is not a sufficient claim for entering country. It's not just need. We have to look at the demographics that we're allowing in here. This complete myth that we can just sort of simply take someone out of one place and then transplant them into another place and they'll become a completely normalized, assimilated citizen. I mean, it's just a complete myth. And I mean, what's going on in Europe now, if anything, just shows that. But yeah, no, I mean, I think that finally, at least, this talk is starting to become a bit more normalized. I think political correctness has taken a bit of a hit over the last couple of years. And so finally, it looks like we're going to be able to start maybe having an honest immigration debate at some point in the future. I'd really hope for that because we sort of need it. So yeah, this might be the beginning of something different.
I agree with you fully there. I think what's going on in South Africa, I think it could be a turning point. I think it could be a watershed, because I think Europeans around the world are realizing that what's going on in South Africa is a template for what can happen here. And I think Europeans are feeling a natural affinity for the Boers. Like, it's just like, if you think of the nation as just an outgrowth of the family, like, to me, like, nationalism, like, it's a natural thing, and patriotism is a natural thing, and to feel affinity with people who are more like you is a natural thing. So I think it's going to lead, and I think it's leading to an awakening of people. And I love your line, like, about leading to a healthy immigration policy or refugee policy by stealth. The reason why the left has gone completely nuts about this is because it gets to the core of what they are trying to do to the West, which is, as Tommy Robinson was saying, as the guy who was banned from the UK was saying, they're trying to replace us. Yeah. And this gets to the heart of that, and it's us standing up and saying no to that, and that's why they're going so hard on this, and that's why this is such an important battle.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're going to get a lot of furious agreement on this topic between us today, but which is fine, seeing as there's so much disagreement out there in the general, like in the rest of the media, not the general populace. The rest of the media will be, you know, they are obviously against Peter Dutton's ideas because they're the left. And like I said, it Peter Dutton's statement really gets to the heart of what these leftists want to do, and that's basically replace the European population with people who aren't European, who are welfare dependent and who are going to vote for the left. I don't know how many of them are consciously wanting to destroy Western civilization. I'm sure there are a few, especially in the socialist alternative and places like that. But I think a lot of it comes down to them knowing that people who tend to immigrate from developing nations also tend to vote left. They tend to vote for people or governments that are going to give them more of taxpayer money. And this is why immigration, it's so important that when we're setting an immigration policy, we are very discriminatory in terms of who we let in, because we don't want to be letting anyone in who is going to end up being a net burden on our society. Like, you only want to let people in who are going to be a strong net benefit, and that means people who are going to, especially entrepreneurs. There are plenty of people in sort of East Asian, South Asian countries who do come in and are extremely very entrepreneurial, which is fine, so long as they adhere to Australian culture and Australian values and don't really rock the boat too much in that regard. But then there are also people who are coming in who are not entrepreneurial at all, and they just want to live off the taxpayer, or they want to work here and take some lesser minimum wage job, and which is ultimately taking a job away from a low skilled Australian.
Yeah, look, mate, I think you're making
suppressing wages.
You're making a good point about the type of people who come in and that sort of thing. But for me, it's really important to state that European people, white people, have a right to exist in and of themselves, and we have a right to set our immigration policy based on that in and of itself.
I just want to mention a few people. You've mentioned Sarah Hanson-Young, and someone mentioned Sarah Hanson-Young in the chat. I have been blocked by Sarah Hanson-Young on Twitter.
You're working your way through the left.
I'm working my way. I've got Wayne Swan's blocked me. Sarah Fascist Young's blocked me. I wonder who else is going to block me next week. Actually, Blair Cottrell followed me today. Hopefully, he's still following me, which is good. Blair, if you're watching this live stream, you're invited to join us. If you ever want to, in the coming weeks.
I'm sure all the best people are blocked from Sarah Hanson-Young, so don't take it personally.
I love it. It's a trophy.
Take it personally, but don't take it too harshly.
Oh, I take it personally, but it's like in a positive way. It's like her saying, you know what I mean? It's like when an idiot calls you an asshole for telling them that they're wrong. It's like, well, sorry, mate.
I just wanted to make one final point. Sorry, actually, maybe before we move on, which is I'm not sure. Did anyone else get the impression that Peter Dutton's speech was actually very angry? I'm not sure if it was just me, but it seemed very it seemed seething with righteous anger. It seemed like he was barely able to hold back what he wanted to say. Like that reference to they need help from a civilized country like ours. Like, I'm not saying I disagree. Any country that wants to go down South Africa's road is not civilized by definition. But I just found that coming from a senior politician, such a blatant remark, I think was extraordinary. Extraordinary.
Well, it's good that he's getting. So I didn't actually see the speech. I just thought it was a policy announcement. I didn't know he made an impassioned speech about it. But yeah, it's good that someone's actually talking about it in such a way, because it is horrendous what's going on there. Like, they're getting attacked based on the color of their skin by these Marxist thugs who are using race to push their Marxist ideology of economic and nationwide destruction on a nation that was, like, let's not lie about it. It was built by white people. If there was no white people, there would be no South Africa. If there was no white people, there would be no farms. So to turn around and say that, well, they stole the land and we have to rectify things by taking it off them. And another thing, that the ANC, like the racists in the ANC, like to say that white people have all the best land, which is completely untrue as well. There are lots of black people who have lots of really, really fertile land in South Africa. So there's just the flat out lies based on racism and Marxism coming out of the African National Congress. These people, whoever they are, really need to pull their head in, because they're going to hurt a lot of people if they don't stop.
Talking about the anger, that's a really interesting insight. My response to that would be that it's a natural reaction when you first get red pilled on something, because the idea of being red pilled is that your eyes are opened to a truth that you didn't see before. And so like it's a Neo the Matrix whoa moment, but it's also a it's a Empire Strikes Back moment. It's a why didn't you tell me moment. Yeah. And so you go back and you think through all your schooling, all the conversations that you had with people, and you go, whoa, that was wrong. That was wrong. This, and not just that situation, but the whole framework in which you understood the world, or the whole framework in which you understood a certain topic was wrong. And so if Peter Dutton is angry, like he may have known this for a while and may be angry about the fact that he's the only one who's actually coming out and saying this, or he may have only just really started to understand this recently. Like he may have watched those Lauren Southern documentaries where she actually interviews the people affected, and like she sees the post-traumatic stress on the like just over the whole bodies of the people who've been victims of these attacks, and just seeing case after case after case and understanding that it's a structural thing, that it's a deliberate thing, like that would make you angry. And then realizing that the whole story of South Africa that's been told to us has been a communist lie as well. Like, not saying that like everything that happened in the apartheid era was good, but just understanding that white South Africa was a bull, and Rhodesia were bulwarks against communism. That the black South African population actually grew under apartheid, and then just seeing the whole way everything has collapsed since then. Like understanding that Nelson Mandela was a terrorist who used to sing "Kill the Boer," and he's portrayed as an angel. Like, just all of these things are just so wrong, and it's natural to feel angry about that.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much more I could add to that. You're correct in that. I mean, when you come out, I'm going to try and articulate it, because I think we've spoken about this before, in that I've never really had a full-on red pill moment, because for me, I mean, I've always been someone who was like, classically liberal, conservative, free thinking, whatever you want to call it, because I don't know, I've always just been naturally inclined that way. So when my socialist teachers, and I remember a few socialist teachers in high school, because there were so many of them, especially my English teacher in grade 12, who I just wrote complete bullcrap and got extra marks because I supported their views. So even then, I remember just thinking, this person is telling me absolute crap and lies. But that being said, it really wasn't until I started getting a lot of information online, and then even more so once I started getting all these YouTube documentaries, and started looking at people like Stefan Molyneux and looking at some real journalism and getting real facts and real information, that I started realizing the full extent to which we have been lied to for so long. Like, I thought South Africa, I thought all those things about Mandela. I thought, he just wanted democracy and freedom and that kind of stuff. But the guy was a communist terrorist. So, but all through high school and all through the media and everything, they're all trying to tell us that this Nelson Mandela guy is somehow a good individual. Like, no, he was a horrendous individual. Having said, we have a question from the audience. Is from Adrian Smith. Is there tension between the level of immigration that is best for Australia's economic interest and Australia's cultural interest? So is there tension between economic and cultural interest?
Do you want to go with this one?
Well, I can answer this. I can answer this question, or David, do you want to answer it? I'd like to answer it if you want to follow up.
You go first. I'll probably disagree. I'm interested in this one.
Maybe you can disagree. Okay. This is the thing. It's interesting we're talking about lies that are coming out of the media. A big lie when it comes to economics is that you need immigration to grow an economy. It's not true. It's completely untrue. What's more important than overall GDP and overall productive output is actually productive output per person. So you can have an economy with 100 people, but your GDP per capita is 1 million, or you can have an economic output of, 1 million, but you got 1 million people. That one with 100 people is going to be a hell of a lot better to live in than the one that's got the bigger economic output, but there's a lot more people. So the idea that you need more immigration in order to push it, like get the economy stronger. It's not true. A lot of the people pushing it are either left-wing activists who just want to destroy Australia, or people who are in maybe big businesses who see a value in having more workers that they can hire and more customers that they can sell goods to. Politicians like it, because they want to get more votes and they get more tax money and all that kind of thing. But ultimately, it's not worth the cost, because the way you grow an economy is by being more productive per person and increasing production increasing production per person that way. So you can have a population going down, but you can also have an economy getting better simply because, say that you go from 1,000 people to 500 people, but those 500 people are 3 times more productive. That economy is going to be a hell of a lot better than it was before, because there's less people and you're all richer. That is to say, you don't want to you don't like population dropping. The population dropping isn't ideal. What's ideal is that you have a growing population that's naturally growing there, that are all going to be productive individuals and be brought up in the nation, and you're going to keep the nation population high in terms of and culturally relatively homogenous as well. It doesn't necessarily need to be ethnically homogenous, but if you cut immigration, the ethnicity over time will tend to merge anyway. So I think, if Australia cut its immigration to 0 tomorrow, within 20, 30 generations, we'd all be some sort of version of, some sort of weird mixed version. We'd probably actually be very attractive and very, very intelligent, because the way that mixed genes end up working a lot of the time. But no, you don't need higher immigration for a stronger economy. It's not true. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, I was going to say what you said, Maddie, but I was going to use a lot more vulgarity, so I think you did a pretty good job.
Okay, cool. Let's keep the vulgarity to a minimum. You can edit my Sadiq Khan article this week. It had quite a bit of vulgarity in it.
There was just a little bit too much in that. I'm not against deportations either, but I keep that one under the radar, just because, there's only so much, in terms of pushing for policy and that sort of stuff. I think that's another matter there. Just in terms of a population dropping, an argument that I'm interested in is the idea that population dropping is people responding to market pressures, and so them having less children is their way of easing the market pressure. So the government actually bringing in more people is actually interfering in the marketplace, because if the population drops, the stress on infrastructure, the stress on access to schools, on access to health, all of that decreases. So population dropping is a natural response of people to the economic pressures.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct as well. Yeah. You're right, because a lot of the reason the population is dropping is that thing we like to talk about is welfare. When you see, traditionally, before the welfare state, the most wealthy people would have the most kids. For obvious reasons, they have the most resources. But now, because the most wealthy people have the most tax burden, so they have the most money stolen off them and transferred to the lower end tend to have more kids than the higher end. And because Australia tends to be relatively middle class and higher, so those middle class people are now having a lot less kids. So the economic incentives to drop. Now, he followed up, you don't think there are generally jobs that Australians won't do for the right price. So there are jobs that Australians won't do for a price that's too low. When you're bringing in a lot of people, it's not so much. It doesn't so much happen on the higher end, like in the high skill level, which is why if we're going to have an immigration policy based on skilled labor, you want to make it so, all right, if we have a skills shortage, then let's make the price really high, like 150,000, 200,000. All right. If you've got a job that no one can fill for $150,000 a year or $200,000 a year, all right, fair enough. You can go and get someone overseas to fill that job, because if no one in Australia can do it for that price, then we're going to need someone else. But what happens is we have a lot of low-skilled migrants coming in. And if you noticed, I things like taxi drivers, I drive Uber, and the amount of times they get into the cab and they're like, wow, an Aussie cab driver is ridiculous. Nothing against non-Aussie cab drivers, a lot of them are fine. I mean, Uber drivers, I should say. No, like most cab drivers suck regardless. But, you know, nothing against.
Do you also take care of your body odor as well, then, mate?
I hope so. I do. I do have. I hope I don't stink. My car did stink once. A baby threw up in the car and it smelled, so I had to go home. It's kind of annoying. The passengers were polite though, so it was like I couldn't.
I wouldn't mind immigrating. Like I wouldn't mind bringing in a whole lot of skilled migrants, skilled in the art of being politicians, and getting them from like old school Texas. I could do that. We could replace we could do a population replacement on Canberra
with Texas. Maybe we can get enough people to give us our guns back. Let's do that.
Yeah.
Can I come at this from a slightly different angle? I'm probably going to ignite a few fires here. If we're looking for debate and not furious, if we're looking for debate and not furious agreement, it might be good. So I'm an objectivist, so I'll come at it from a slightly different perspective. My perspective is this: that we are not in normal circumstances at this point in time. So an immigration policy, a moral immigration policy, can only be talked about in reference to a moral society. There's no point saying what sort of immigration policy should be moral if our society is going to be immoral. And at this point in time, we have a democracy, which is mob rule, which means, unfortunately, that cultural influx has a lot more importance than it would otherwise in a free society, because when we vote in other people, bring in other people, those people can influence your lives and take away your rights, because that's what a democracy is. You can vote on pretty much any issue, provided you get enough votes and the right electorates in the right ways. And so it really, really is much more important that we consider culture than as would normally be in a free society, which a free society would essentially be along the lines of, you don't have a right to exclude people from this country, provided they're not a threat to your rights. And people could form their own cultures and communities just by vote of their feet, and they wouldn't be made to not discriminate against people, or they wouldn't be made to pay for welfare and so on and so forth. So it'd be an entirely different situation. But certainly, don't ask me what's appropriate as a system, and this idea of economic tension, cultural tension, and what's the right approach. There is no right approach at this point in time. We're at sort of like we're at a completely out of whack situation, and so we need to stop thinking about. I suppose it's GDP is not our prime focus. That should not, and nor should GDP per capita. We should be thinking about how we're going to reverse this entire trend of mass immigration and everything. So we're in completely abnormal circumstances. In normal circumstances, it wouldn't be a question of, economic tensions and cultural tensions. In normal circumstances, we'd have a free society, but we don't. So we have to think what's in our long-term interest, and certainly not the path Europe's going down. Certainly not.
Yeah. So I thought you were going to be disagreeing with us a bit more. I think you've sort of agreed with us in a like you've just agreed with us from a different angle.
Yeah, I would have said what you said, but with a lot more vulgarity.
Yeah. We should start swearing a lot more. Maybe we'll make it. Maybe we'll do a live stream from a little later, and we can.
Vodka in here. Yeah.
Although, let's do a drunk live stream where we can actually disagree really loudly. Yeah. We should just pick a topic, like who's the best football team, and we can all say that Melbourne suck and move on.
I know when I see it.
All right. Well, I mean, that was a good discussion on that one.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I should just finish my point from before. So my point from before was regarding the Uber drivers and stuff, is that when you get mass immigration, you tend to suppress the wages of the low skilled workers. So Adrian, if you're still in the live streaming, just to follow up there, like he talked about, like he hasn't seen an Australian cleaner or security guard. It's because when you get mass immigration from generally developing nations, they will do these low skilled jobs for a lower price, and it does flood Australians who tend to be more like higher educated and want higher prices for their higher wages for their labour. It takes them out of the market, and they tend to have to go elsewhere, which is one of the big. He is still good. Hopefully, we're answering the question well for you. So yeah, we are when you have such a flood of immigrants coming into a nation, the people who really feel it the most are the low-skilled workers. They're the people who aren't able to negotiate their labour hire because they don't have the skills, they don't have the experience. So what you tend to see is people who are new to the employment market, or teenagers, or maybe the people with low IQs, people who are unable to get jobs in even a normal circumstances. It makes their life a lot harder, so they tend to be more likely to go onto welfare. So this is why it's really important, like I said, to have a sensible immigration policy. And it's really important that we have this debate, because all I know is that if we're bringing in a new city the size of Melbourne every 10 to 15 years, it's too many people. It's like we can't fit it. It doesn't matter where they're from. It doesn't matter what their cultural beliefs are. It's too many people. We can't physically keep up with the demand for infrastructure and things like that, and schooling, like you said, especially when it's all government controlled. I mean, I'd argue that we should probably free the schooling market up and set up a voucher system at the very least. But even then, it's like, roads, rail, all these different things get put under severe stress. So I thought we'd just move on. We had a good discussion on that one. So let's just move on to briefly to free speech in Britain. So we spoke about this last week with Brittany Pettibone and Martin Sellner being banned from the country, Lawrence Southern as well. Shortly after that, I made a video talking about how Tommy Robinson was thrown out of Speaker's Corner. He just wanted to go and do a talk there. Came back last night, I believe, and read out Martin Sellner's speech to what looked like a crowd of hundreds, if not thousands, of people waving British flags. And it was a good speech. I mean, it was what you would expect, slightly modified given the circumstances of the last few weeks. But, I mean, you talked about South Africa being a watershed moment. I think this could also be a watershed moment for Britain, where British people, have seen this is what happens. This speech, right? This speech of Tommy Robinson, or Martin Sellner, I should say, that would have been spoken to like 100 people, maybe would have got him 10, 20, 30,000 YouTube views, whatever it was. It will now be viewed by millions of people around the world, all because they tried to censor it. So well done to the UK government on abusing people's human right to speak. All you've done is just ignite a fire that was really waiting to get set off. And people are obviously quite agitated and pissed off by the encroachment on free speech in Britain. But it's great to see how many people are willing to actually stand up and fight for it, despite the risks.
This is all part of a scheme. This goes back to October of last year, when Amber Rudd, the Home Secretary, she came out with a statement after seeing the Anderson report into counterterrorism, and she said that she wanted to strengthen the laws around counterterrorism, right? So raise the jail time to 15 years for those who watch terrorist content, far-right propaganda, and jihadi material. And so there was a question, what does she mean by far-right, blah, blah, blah. And that's been decided for us now. It's very clear what she means by far-right. This flabby-faced shill, Amber Rudd, who has her job partly because she's a woman, through the Conservative Party's A-list program. So what she's done here is she's started to bring the normal conservative views into the bounds of terrorism, because what they fear is social unrest at the hands of Tommy Robinson, Martin Sellner, and the like. They fear that these people are exposing the second powder keg of Europe so much, which is Islam. They are exposing it so much that we have potential mass unrest on our hands, and they will be responsible for it, because even the Conservative Party is now behind this neo-Marxist push. And they know that when people wake up to what's going on with Islam, the culture that they have supported, their power base will absolutely crumble, and they will be absolutely damned by everyone, by history. And so what's going on is that they're trying to protect their own hide, which is natural to expect because of their politicians, but it's just interesting to see how they do it sometimes. So they're actually willing to go so far as to now say that they're trying to basically say that Tommy Robinson is a terrorist, and they're doing this because they're looking at the Finsbury Park mosque attack last year, where Darren Osborne was the killer, and he drove into Muslims in a van, and the investigators said, "Oh, this killer has links to the extreme right." Now, in the course of trial, it was revealed that these so-called links to the extreme right were the fact that he had consumed Tommy Robinson videos online, the fact that he had subscribed to an email list from Britain First, who are also being politically persecuted, and also that he was watching InfoWars. Now, all these other people that have been detained and barred from entering the UK have links to Tommy Robinson, and now I'm going to see him or whatever. And we've got another one, Lutz Backman, who's recently been also had the same fate, and he's a founder of Pegadan. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to paint Tommy Robinson as a terrorist, and they're trying to paint criticism of Islam as far right. And they're willing to go, as we can see now, to draconian lengths to do that.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, I was doing satires, making fun of the way that the then American government, the Obama administration, was using the expression violent extremism rather than terrorism, or even to go so far as to call it Islamic terrorism. Because like violent extremism, like it's basically like two verbs put together. And like the prediction that I was making was that you could apply this to anybody who was deemed to be a violent extremist. And we're seeing it right now. That's a really good point. And the other thing that you point out is that like again, like Dutton here, like talking about South Africa, like the context of the speech, like he basically said, you are being replaced.
Yeah.
Again, like the speech gets to the heart of what's going on in Europe. It gets to the heart of the cultural Marxist agenda in Europe, and it gets to the heart of like their power base, and it attacks them directly right at the core. It's their kryptonite.
Yeah, I mean, it really is Islam. I think in the speech, it was a terrific speech. I got to say, he described it as the shadow overhanging Europe, and it was a very. I just think it was a tremendous speech, and it's almost like the government gave them a help. No, in fact, it is the government gave them a helping hand. That we had to have Tommy Robinson read it out just made the moment all the more powerful, really. So, and symbols are important because they show they're sort of like the little dots on the graph. They're the points that we can see, and we can see, that's where we've been going. No. And so it is a symbolic moment. Will it turn into a watershed? It's probably too early to tell. I mean, I was fearing that something very ugly would go down, that they would try and that Tommy Robinson would be hurt, or maybe they'll try and stop him again from speaking or something. In which case, we probably would definitely have a watershed moment. But
yeah. So I think it was great that so many people turned out to hear him, and he sort of touched on a point. The fact that it was Tommy Robinson reading out someone else's speech on this issue because he was banned from actually entering the country to read this speech just made it sort of hammered home the point that they do not want you to be saying these things.
He was in a detention center.
Sorry, what was that?
He was in a detention center as he wrote that, and he mentioned that in the speech. It was just...
I saw it, exactly. It was like, and I'm writing this in the detention center because they won't let me in because they don't like what I have to say. It's such
like
a horrendous.
It's like a Pauline epistle, isn't it? Written from jail.
Yeah, and I think it's great. Well, you made a really good point that the establishment are really wed to this policy now, and if people wake up, then they are going to be held responsible for it. But I mean, it's never too late to repent, especially if you're in a position of power. So Theresa May's just dumb. She's a low. I can't remember. She's not a smart individual. She's elevated well above her station. I mean, the fact that she's even an MP, this person, like you hear her speak and the policies and the way she acts, she should not be in Parliament at all, let alone the Prime Minister of the country. How the hell that happened, I have no idea. But while she's in power, I don't see much happening other than, unless maybe she gets enough pushback from the rest of the party to just say, all right, the protesters have won. We got to give free speech back. We got to have this in, we got to get out of the EU. Just cut it. We got to close the borders, and we actually got to talk about this. Start talking honestly about Islam. Unless they actually start doing that, I think the Conservatives are just going to be on the sinking ship. The sad thing is that the only alternative is even worse, like a lot worse. I think that's probably the only thing that's actually saving Theresa May right now, the fact that Jeremy Corbyn is so horrendous. But it was good. It was a really good thing to see, because obviously I'm such a free speech advocate, and when you see the state shutting people down and refusing entry based on political opinion, it's really good to see quite a large number of people come out in support of the right to speak your mind, especially on issues that are as controversial as this.
Just tying in Magnus with something, well, what both you and Maddie have mentioned, and tying in with the conversation that Maddie and I were having last week, because we were talking about, where's that British leader going to come from? Because it seems like Nigel Farage, like, he achieved like the Brexit vote, and then it's like he sort of said, okay, my work here is done. And Boris Johnson is, he's Boris Johnson. And we're talking about, I think, Mog, but maybe this is Tommy Robinson's moment. Like, this speech really could make him.
You think that he would have political aspirations?
Well, yeah, like it's that thing where if you're going to challenge, like say if you're in a tribe, and like a tribe has, like, it enforces social norms through like either violence or through just like social means, like what's that thing where you
conformity in speech and ostracism.
Ostracism, that's the word. Yeah. So like if you're in a small tribe and you want to challenge the leader, you're either going to be killed, you're going to be banished, or you're going to be the new leader. And so like here's somebody who's making a really big point here. Like this guy is the guy who reads the speech of the guy who was banned, and thousands of people come to him at the Speaker's Corner. This guy, he's been to Europe, like he's been to Poland, and like he was accepted there as like a normal British politician, and it just blew his mind that like people could have like the kind of thing that's described as terrorism in Britain is normal in Poland. It's normal conservative values and it's public policy in Poland. And so he's come back to Britain, and all of a sudden he's a focal point. At the moment, he's the man.
Yeah, look, I don't know. I think that's interesting. I mean, I think you're right about Poland. I mean, they're completely laughing at us, and I think part of that has to do. I mean, Douglas Murray in his book, The Strange Death of Europe, he says it's because of the fact that that they have this sort of like tragic sense of life over in those Eastern European states. They're sort of less optimistic than the Western Europe. They
also suffered through communism as well.
Exactly,
let's not ignore that. When it comes to places like Poland and a lot of these Eastern European countries, I think it's Hungary is another one.
They've been immunized against all the against the police.
That's the thing, and they can still remember it. A lot of them are still old enough. I had a passenger the other day, 2 passengers from Poland, a father and a son, and the father was old enough to remember the communists, and he's like, "Mate, you do not want these assholes anywhere near you." So like they know like exactly how bad it is, and they're telling if you see these communist scum, you kick them out, and they can spot it a mile away. Like you said, they've been immunized against it. It's just sad that they had to go through so much suffering in order to do so, and I hope that we don't have to go through that much suffering in order to be immunized from it as well. I really, really hope we don't have to go through that, which is obviously why we're doing live streams like this, and I'm making the content that I do, and everyone, like, we have people like Tommy Robinson and everyone sort of speaking out about it in order to stave off what would be an absolute travesty of misery and suffering that we don't have to go through, because we can choose not to go through it. We just have to get enough people to know the truth. It's like, you tell the truth enough, and you tell people the facts. Like, Nelson Mandela is such a good point. We've been so lied about him for so long, and when you tell people the truth, they're like, what? But if you keep reminding people over and over, it's like, this is the truth. This is the truth. You've been lied to.
Yeah.
Eventually, they get maybe a Peter Dutton red pill moment where it's like, wait a minute, I've been lied to my entire life, and these are the assholes that have been lying to me. So you go from believing them to absolutely hating them. You know, it's like the rebellious child comes out and they realize that they've been lied to, and all these people have sold them a dud, and the dud is really going to hurt him in the end. So they turn around and go, wait a minute, why did you do that? And the idea is to sort of get people to open people's eyes and truly red pill them in the, you know, in the true metaphorical sense, and get them onto what is the truth, which is, it's really important. You just tell people. And one of the things that the left has had over us for so long, because they've controlled the media and the narrative, is the ability to browbeat people into submission and say, you're not allowed to say that, you're a racist, and you're this and you're that. But now, because so many people are connected, like, you don't need a media anymore to speak your mind and tell the truth and tell your own story, because that's the case now. It's sort of cutting out the media, like it's sort of cutting out the ability for, you know, the label of racist, bigot, etc. You know, insert dumb insult here. It's cut that power out, because people have realized they've said it so often, and that the truth is so opposite to what they've said, that it's not believable anymore. And this is the thing. This is why a lot of this censorship's coming through, and they're really clamping down on it so far, like right recently, because I think the left have really started to realize that they are genuinely losing this battle. They might still be the dominant culture. They're still definitely the dominant culture, but the momentum is way against them, and they want people to shut up as quickly as possible. It's funny because it's like the idea. I've got a video coming out in the next. I might release it this week on cryptocurrencies, which sort of talks about how we got the internet has made speech, you know, communication free, and I think cryptocurrencies are going to make the financial system free, and you know, hopefully we can sort of bring in a new golden age. But you know, I think that's up to us.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, like, as you said, the media, or the left in general, just using the smear over and over again, like this racist, sexist, Islamophobe, bigot, homophobe, blah blah blah, all this nonsense, over and over again, so much that it stops having quite the same sting. But there's also something that we could do to accelerate that process, which is what Paul Weston did, which is just to just openly call himself a racist and then just move on. So basically, I mean, he's not a racist. The idea is that you call yourself that, just admit it, and so you basically take away all meaning from the word. It's the same process that the African Americans did with the word nigger, and it's the same process that the Trump supporters did with the word deplorables. They adopted it and made it their own word, and so it weakens the sting of it. And so, I mean, I'd just like to say personally to the left, yes, there's no point hiding anymore. Because I believe in liberty and individual merit, I am indeed a racist, sexist Islamophobe.
Well, there was a great article in XYZ, I think, was it published today or yesterday, about, it's by Adam Piggott, about, yes, I want to be able to discriminate, which, you know, basically making the point that to discriminate is to choose. Every time you choose something, you are by definition discriminating. So you should be allowed to discriminate in pretty much any way that you want. Like, there's why you're not allowed to discriminate. It's like, do you really want people to be telling you that you can't make your own choices? I mean, yeah, look, you should be discouraging people to discriminate for stupid reasons and reasons that don't actually matter. And you don't want to people to be unnecessarily mean to their fellow human beings. But you still have the right to discriminate against anyone for any reason if you want to. I mean, they can then talk about you being an asshole if they want to. That's their right. But your right is to you still have that right to discriminate regardless of the other person's feelings. So I think we should maybe start taking back words like that, like take back the word discriminate. Every time someone says you are against, you know, I'm just anti-discrimination, you know, you can just say, well, you know, discrimination actually means choice. So what you're saying is you're actually anti-choice, which it would be interesting to see how they react. I would imagine you'd probably get called a racist, a bigot, or a homophobe, or something.
And then just say you're a racist. So yeah, because all they do have is words in the end. Sorry, David, I'll let you talk.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, regarding the word racist, I like to take that a step further. I argue that the word racist is actually like a made-up word by the left. The word racist came into use around the time of the Russian Revolution. like when you look at what Marxism does, like the whole point of it is to pit one segment of a nation against another segment of the nation, to pit the poor against the rich, and to say that the poor of one country have more in common with the poor of another country than they do of the rich people of their own country. And so then racism is brought in on top of that to say, well, if you're against this country, the people of this country, you're racist against them. Really, racism is not racism. Racism is an immune system. What we're talking about here are the racial, the cultural norms that people put on people who come in from outside. They put these norms onto them to say you either fit in or you get out. And even then, when you come in here, you're not one of us, you're one of them, but you're a guest. And so that's what immunizes a country against attacks from the outside, against being replaced. And so the word racism is a very useful term because it just completely undercuts all of that. It stops people from just doing the natural thing to enforce who they are, to assert who they are.
Well, we should add, I mean,
yeah,
I agree with you to a certain point. Sorry, I've been looking at chat as well. So, and the track, that was Louder with Crowder. Someone in chat's actually mentioned we should get some T-shirts with just slogans on it, like saying, I'm a transphobe or I'm a racist or something like that.
That's great.
It'd be kind of funny. So I just mentioned maybe we should get socialism is for F star GS. It's socialism is for figs, but the I is the Louder with Crowder T-shirt. It's hilarious. I should get one. So I mean, I think what a lot of the left have done. I mean, there was genuine racial hatred in the United States. I mean, I don't think you should be attacking someone based on the color of their skin, especially if they're trying to fit in. Like, you should always give people the option. All right, are you going to fit into our society? Are you going to become a productive member of our society? And I mean, a lot of the problems in America are less to do with racism these days and a lot more to do with welfare. Like, as certain people have pointed out, welfare, I mean, black poverty was dropping significantly up until the 60s, and then they put in these social welfare programs, and guess what happened? They put in social welfare, we ended up getting a lot of single mothers, and it ends up getting a lot worse. And now they just quiet, and now it's become that thing, you're my racist and my sexist, and you just want to keep the black people down. Where they're sort of using genuine racial hatred from the past, which you don't want, to justify theft and Marxist policies now. So I think we've got to make the distinction between genuine poor behaviour and just Marxist nonsense, and which is why it's important. Which is why the real fight is actually against the socialist left, and it's against the Marxists, and it's against them because they tend to appropriate social causes to push an immoral agenda. So we really need to be calling them out on that. And while we're doing that, we can't be sort of say, you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater, as the coach of Geelong likes to say repeatedly. You got to actually recognize what did happen and what didn't happen, but then realize also that the situation now is different to what it was 50 years ago. The problems now are not based on racial hatred. They just aren't. They're not based on racial hatred. The problems now are due to Marxist indoctrination and Marxist policies that are infesting society at pretty much every level, especially the education media and the media. So that's where we got to be worried. That's where we got to be focusing our efforts. While I agree with you that they did appropriate the word, there are genuine things that we shouldn't find acceptable in that mind. Yeah,
I think that's very well put, actually, David. Yeah, I mean, there is arguably some merit to the word when you're talking about maybe like a biological essentialism, that a member of one race thinks in this particular way inevitably. And I mean, but obviously the word's gone beyond that now, and it's completely lost its meaning. And in fact, as you were speaking, Maddie, I had an idea in another one. this idea of hatred. I mean, in my mind, and I'm not sort of criticizing you for using it and saying that this is your motive, but this is another one of these sort of fake terms that we have rolling around. This idea of hate speech, as if what we need really is just more love speech, and hate is irrational, and so on.
Don't misunderstand me. Sorry for interrupting. Don't misunderstand me. I believe in free speech and not hate speech. I think people should be allowed to have any opinion that they like. I'll still call it out. Like if you want to dislike people because of the color of their skin, you have that right. But I'm still going to call you an idiot for it. I still think it's just a waste of your time. Like there are genuine reasons to dislike people, and that's not one of them. So we're talking about in America, and it's especially in we're talking about America, where there was a lot of people came over from Africa, and you have groups like the KKK, and then it's formed by the Democrats, I might add, who are going around and genuinely hurting these people based on the color of their skin. But I mean, don't conflate. When I say racial hatred, I mean genuinely these people wishing ill will and using state force to push ill will on them. Don't forget that in America they had, it took a long time for the Republicans to get the Civil Rights Act through, and a lot of the discrimination was enforced by the state. So it's really important not to conflate the two. I think that if you want to say stupid things about other people based on something that isn't entirely relevant, then you are well within your rights to say that. But just be ready to get a bit of blowback and to debate your point with facts, reason, and evidence. Because if you don't, then you're going to look like a fool.
Sorry, did you want to move on, or may I just?
Oh no, you can. If you want to respond, that's fine.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, we do actually need to. That's one of the problems. That's actually one of the big shames that what the left has done with the word racism is it might end up actually harming victims of actual evil racial discrimination, is because the moment we start calling people racist, people will probably stop listening. I mean, and rightfully so, because I mean, just no one knows what anything means anymore. It is, as you said, I mean, it is a problem, and it might, in the end, harm people who are victims of genuine malignance.
Yeah, that's very true, and it tends to happen not just for racial hatred, but if you have a look at the left-wing feminists #MeToo campaign, they stop all this sexual assault stuff. If someone looks at me, it's sexual harassment. The same thing happens when you make everything sexual harassment. Nothing is. When you make everything racial hatred, nothing is. It's really important to make it to make these things very, very specifically defined so that we know what they are when we see them. But when you're calling everything out as, that's my racism, that's my sexism, that's my bigotry, blah 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 blah, then it just ultimately it loses the power, and it means people who are genuinely victims of abuse tend to get drowned out by this left-wing essentially doublespeak. Now, someone else has just made a funny comment in the chat. Steve has said we should get a bumper sticker with XYZ that says trans homo Islamophobe. I don't know. It would be funny because it would be so hard to read that someone would be what, and then they'd have to think about it.
and then crash into your car.
Yes, but it would be mental illness, of course. Did anybody see Louder with Crowder's video where he went to the trans group? It was the Sven Computer.
No.
He got pulled by Twitter and YouTube within a few hours. I think it's up on BitChute. I think it's up on YouTube. You've got to see it. It is literally the funniest thing I've seen in at least 1 year. I've watched it 3 times now, and I was in tears every single time. It is so funny. You've got Sven Computer goes. Just to give you the rundown. Yeah, if you guys are fans of Louder with Crowder, Sven Computer goes into this meeting because Crowder and his main employee, not gay Jared, have been banned from this event. So they send the intern Sven Computer in, and there's this guy, his character is a computer, and he's saying, it's like trans people, like, I identify as this, I identify as that. He's like, he identifies as a computer. And he's like, well, actually, my thing is normal. Like, I'm actually a computer. Like, you're not, you know. Oh, beep, beep. You got to say beep, beep. You got to say it. It is so good. It's hilarious. And it's like, it absolutely destroys this trans nonsense. It worked perfectly. The people in there don't even realize that they're destroying their own nonsense. I won't ruin it for you, but go check Louder with Creator. I think it should be up on YouTube now. They blur the things out, but I think the uncensored one is up on BitChute anyway. So if you want to watch it there, it's okay. All right, so Dave, do you want to move on to the last topic of the night, the activism and all that kind of thing? It's good that we got Magnus here because he's sort of all over that as well.
Well, yeah, Magnus is really doing it. So I'll just reference a few things which have been written on the XYZ recently, and just talk briefly about a couple of like the things that I've been doing, and then like just throw the question to you guys. Lucas Russis has been writing some really important stuff. He's been like he had an article, How to Save Australia Day, and he basically made 3 points: get organised, start today, and don't stop. So when he's saying get organised, like all he's saying is like meet up with your mates who think along the same lines as you on a regular basis and talk about politics. And that's how you start political clubs. That's how you start an organisation. Australia doesn't need another micro party to the right of the Liberal Party. We need people to like talk to other, what I like to call lone wolf conservatives, and just go, okay, how are we actually going to make a difference in the world? And so then, like on the weekend, we published in 2 parts his article on socialist alternative.
Great article, by the way. That was brilliant. Yeah, it was amazing. I'm like, how do you know? It's almost like he was in the group. Seriously, it wouldn't surprise me if he would actually been there.
I read his stuff, and I'm just, where do you get this stuff?
Yeah, how do you know that?
Yeah,
that's amazing. And like, this is better journalism than most journalists in the country.
Yeah, he's the #1 journalist in Australia. Like, not blowing our own trumpet or anything, but he's that good.
That's a great.
Not only does he know like what happened, he knows the how and the why, and like he's analysed how socialist alternative became what they are, and like how they started as a core, and they literally brainwashed everybody who came in. So they got rid of most of the people, but the crazy ones stayed, and they're fanatical, and they've been able to have an influence far beyond their numbers. And so it's interesting because like I've seen on Facebook, people are, I think, really influenced by what he's talking about. Like Gallifrey Jones, who has a few different personas, like he's got Robbie V Meme, he's got Make Australia Grouse Again, which I just reckon is just one of the best names for a website that I've ever seen in my life. Make Australia Grouse Again. He put up an interesting comment last week, which went, do you remember that time when 50,000 patriots marched through Melbourne against halal? No, neither do I. And so yeah, it's sort of riffing on this idea, like basically we care about what's going on in our country, and we're owning the internet now. Like we're pushing back against the left despite the bans. It's what matters now. Like, and the XYZ can sort of act as a sort of, we've got a double purpose of like maybe becoming Australia's Breitbart, but also acting as a node for people to like actually get together and go, okay, like we want to talk about this, we want to take action on this, we want to influence policy and the culture on this. What do you guys think about that?
I think it's great. I really think it's a very good idea. And Blair Cottrell was on Twitter talking about doing it, I think today actually. And when I saw that, I'm like, yeah, let's do that. If he organised a rally, I'd do everything I could to be there. I guess a big problem with the rallies and stuff is it's that they're at a specific time, and you've got to be able to actually get there. But you know, provided it's maybe on like a Sunday afternoon, or even a Saturday afternoon, or like around lunchtime, that sort of time. You know, like when the free speech rally was. As long as the timing good, I could make it. And I would imagine most people could make it anyway, but I'd be doing everything I could to get to any kind of rally that was in favour of free speech or against multiculturalism, or, you know, in favour of Australian culture and all that kind of thing. And it would be great to see people actually get out there and hitting the streets on that kind of thing, because it would be hilarious to watch the media be dumbfounded by it and cry far right, which is another one of their little dog whistles.
Yeah,
that they love doing it. Also, I think one thing we haven't actually mentioned on the live stream enough is that it's really important to note that far right is actually left wing. When they say far right, what they mean are National Socialists, and National Socialists are leftists. One of my favorite things on, trolling people on Twitter, and I used to love doing it on Facebook as well before I left, is to remind the left that National Socialism, aka Nazism, aka Adolf, was a left winger. The propaganda of the Nazi Party was the same as the communists. So it's really, really important that when we see these labels like that, or they're just a neo-Nazi, that you call it out right away. I don't know, I'm not a lawyer, but there are a few people in America who are actually starting to file defamation lawsuits against certain websites and outlets that do that and do things like that and make slanderous and defamatory claims like that. I don't know how easily you can do it about the label far right, because I don't know if it's defined specifically enough, and that they might be able to still come under the honestly held opinion defense. But it would be interesting to test the case if they could, because it is essentially a lie about someone's character. Like when you say you're far right or you're a neo-Nazi or something like that, you're lying about them, firstly. And second of all, you're slandering them and you're making a very, very bad label. Like you're labeling them as, as someone who is basically the same as Adolf Hitler. And when that's completely untrue, like when you're labeling someone who is essentially conservative or libertarian or whatever you want to call it, as a neo-Nazi National Socialist and trying to use that to smear their character, I think that this is something that we should really start maybe getting up in arms about. And I made that video about Blair Cottrell, where, asking, is he a neo-Nazi? Is Blair Cottrell a Nazi? And I just went and looked at the United Patriot Front's policy pages, which is the party that he's the chairman of. And it took me less than a minute to realize that he is not a neo-Nazi. It was really, really easy to find this information. Yet, for some reason, the media keeps painting him with this idiotic and completely slanderous and defamatory label. So, I mean, I'm wondering if we could maybe sort of get the activism into the legal area. I think because a few YouTubers are talking about, I think Crowder has started suing people. Like Crowder is suing someone. I think they're suing Twitter actually for allowing defamatory posts to be able to remain on Twitter when they're removing other stuff. So even things like that might be worth thinking about. The problem with taking legal action is it does cost a lot of money, and unfortunately,
if we have enough clout,
sorry,
if we have enough clout, we could do it. It was great to see the crybabies, like the people who tried to attack the deplorable, and when they actually they actually got serious legal consequences, and they were whinging about it. It would actually be really awesome to see leftists actually suffer some legal consequences for stuff that they do. Like if you think of like just incitement to violence that like some of like the Antifa people do, like they dox people and say, oh, this person lives here. Does anybody that we know live in the area? Like they're inciting violence against people. It'd be great to see them actually face consequences for that.
Well, that should be a serious offence. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean,
they get away with it.
They get away with it. If you're going to put someone's name on the internet and say, go and get that person, why is that not a jailable offence? Like that should land you in prison for several years. This is not something that is acceptable.
Coming back to what I'm talking about, I think if we can basically own the culture, and if we can take back that public space, then we will be able. That will give us the clout to be able to do that sort of thing. What do you think about that sort of thing, Magnus?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I totally agree with your idea that we don't need another little micro party. Milton Friedman spoke about this. It's not the fact that we've got the bad people in power. What we have to do is make the wrong people do the right thing. And we do that by changing what they feel is in their political self-interest. We do that by changing the ground underneath them. And it was Antonio Gramsci, who was a Italian communist who was jailed by Mussolini's regime. He wrote about this, and he basically, I think, coined the term metapolitics. And he said he pointed out that authority and legitimacy comes from the ruling culture, and that's why free speech is, every dictatorship has to tackle that, because speech is the form of building and a culture. And it's also why when Lenin got into power, one of the first things that he did, and it wasn't just economic nationalization and giving the land back to the poor peasants and everything, but he set about an active movement to change the culture. He spoke to artists, he spoke to poets, and he tried to get them basically to be more Marxist, really. So he understood the power of culture. And yeah, I absolutely agree that we need a street presence. I think also something that we need to do and start thinking about seriously is our artistic presence. And I mean arts broadly. I don't just mean, like visual arts, but I mean, we need to be supporting, like writers and musicians and even poets, just anyone that can start having a positive impact on start, I suppose, distilling, if you will, a little the Marxist swamp that currently permeates through culture, because art can be very, very powerful. And sorry, you're going, David.
Oh yeah, I'll just butt in for a few minutes on that one. Yeah. There was recently that musical Hamilton, where they had black actors playing the founding fathers and that sort of stuff. So I've got an idea where we can whitewash a black musical. There's an old show, the old musical Showboat, where the music was written by George Gershwin. It's one of my favorite jazz pieces. Summertime comes from it. Apparently, it's only allowed to be played by black actors. I would love to actually put an all-white production of that on in the heart of Brunswick. I think it would be amazing.
I'll be happy to play the piano for you if you would.
Yes, I saw that you composed. That would be brilliant. I'd rather have somebody else do it. I'll act as the artistic director and just say, "Oh, you know what you're doing there? Just do that. That's great."
I should. You've sort of given me a bit of an opportunity to plug my SoundCloud. I've got some banging deep house techno music there. If anyone likes it, likes that kind of stuff. I've got 3 songs that I'm really proud of. 2 that are decent, and then I've got another one coming which I'm relatively proud of as well.
It's been on one of your videos, hasn't it, Matty?
It's been on a couple of them. Yeah, I've been putting them in there. So if you like techno music with no vocals and just thumping beats and rocking tunes, and I don't know what's the lingo these days. But anyway, if you like that kind of stuff, I'd put a link in the chat.
Just one moment there, Matthew. Sorry, just remember we are trying to change the culture, so you should really have just several minutes of just smooth techno, and then just very subtly a sexy female voice just says "fuck the left," and then we go on. So that's
probably not a bad idea for the next album, actually. Yeah. The first album is Es la que es, which means it is what it is in Spanish, and the next one I'll make whatever "fuck the left" is in Spanish.
You could just drop Red Pills all the way through.
Well, I'll do it backwards, so it's like, what is it? I'll do it backwards. Do you know what Soros is backwards? Fucking Soros.
Coincidence? I think not.
Matty, that snake Soros was just gold. It was amazing.
Which ending do you prefer? Did you prefer the nice ending or the evil ending?
I haven't seen the evil ending yet.
You haven't seen the evil ending? Oh,
no,
mate.
Well, I don't want to. I want to have that mystery still. You got
to see the evil ending. The evil ending is amazing, and you'll see why I didn't put it on YouTube.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it wouldn't have got pulled from YouTube, but so it's not like it was horrendously offensive or anything. But I thought it would be. Wow, I'm being really cheeky.
That is actually another culture thing. I think the cartoons that you make are really cool. I reckon it'd be quite interesting to have a Maddie's Modern Life cartoon series. I think they tell stories. You could use them in kindergartens, like, because like we've got to go for the young ones, just like the safe schools people are.
I was actually thinking about that. I was thinking about doing stories.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, right now I'm spending all the time on the channel. Maybe we can do a crowdfunding for Maddie's Modern Kids Life or something, and I could just do kids stories, red pilling kids stories. You know what I mean? It's like,
they'll all come out like the 5-year-old will come home and tell his parents that taxation is theft. It'll be amazing.
Hey, mummy, do you know taxation is theft? And then Johnny's mummy said, "What are you talking about? Taxation is the price that you pay for living in a modern society." So Johnny said, that's just what slaves say. You're a slave, mummy.
And then Daddy gets home and says, "Johnny's right."
Yeah, I told your mother this years ago, and she didn't believe me.
And she takes all my money.
Exactly. So we did taxation is theft, and underneath it, so is marriage.
Yeah, there's your first video, Matt.
Yeah, Gary just mentioned, maybe I could do a storybook or something like that. These are all things that can happen down the path. Like, you got to remember, I'm not doing this full time, and there are other reasons which I won't mention on the live stream, which are taking up a fair amount of my time other than work. So it would be, the dream is to be able to make content on a full-time basis. We've already got one very, very generous contributor who's really helping a lot. But in order to do this full time, I kind of need another 29 just like it. So one down, 29 to go. And once we can get that sort of level, then I can start doing it full time. And then we'll do the kids. I can do kids stories. Which I'm doing kids stories. I was actually thinking of doing Bible stories as well. So I have the channel for kids stories, channel for Bible stories, and just be able to do all that kind of thing full time. But again, I've got to prioritize. I've got to prioritize.
As long as it has the Penguin Pirates.
Penguin Pirates. Yep, the Penguin Pirates was the pirate. How's it going, everyone? It's Penguin Pirate coming to you from Radioland. Actually, that's the next video for the cryptocurrencies one. The Penguin Pirates and the family. That's the family. And then I've got, what's his name? Short Bus Matty. I'm really enjoying making the content. It's hard to get views now because the algorithm changed to really screw. It's really screwed small content creators quite a lot. Like, those videos are getting like 300 views if I'm really lucky, whereas before they would have got 500, 600. But well, you make the hill steeper. I'll get stronger when I'm at the top. That's all that happens.
And the internet is forever.
Exactly, the internet's forever, and I'm about to get a DTube presence as well. So, I think everyone should use alt tech. YouTube's still the best place for content creation, and XYZ's still pretty good as well. I like your idea of actually turning XYZ into Australia's Breitbart. I think there is a market for it. It's funny because XYZ's got this reputation by the media's slandered XYZ so much that it's like everyone sort of thinks it's an alt-right thing, but it's really not. So it would be interesting to see how it goes. Hopefully we can get some, keep growing the patronage and get that in there so we can keep investing in the site. And the more it grows, the stronger we get. And once we get boots on the ground, if we had a protest of a few thousand people, can you imagine how scared they'd be? It would be amazing.
Oh yeah, it'd be huge. Yeah, because we're bigger than them.
Bigger than my poultry little affair, that's for
sure. So, any final thoughts, guys?
I'd just say I agree with you absolutely on making XYZ Australia's Breitbart. But yeah, final thought would be to recognise that you have support. That sounds like Beyond Blue. No, recognise that there are people out there who think the same way, and stop being afraid. I think I've found myself increasingly just so uncaring for all the smears that are thrown at me, and I think you've got to remember that whatever happens to you, think of the worst possible scenario. There'll be people out there who will be standing right with you, and
that's the thing. You're totally right, and I've got to mention Milo's talk last year. that for me, that was kind of my watershed moment. Watershed moment is the term of the day. Thanks to David there. That was my watershed moment, in that I realized just how many people are really yearning for this kind of content and this kind of material, and for people to stand up and say, no, your views are okay. You're allowed to think differently. You're allowed to be politically incorrect. And how good it was to have so many people like that around you as well. It was like, it felt so great to know there were so many people that were either like-minded or at least had minds open enough to have a discussion with them without being insulted immediately or have them get angry, or at least have a discussion with someone where the goal is to find the truth rather than to assert dominance over someone else, which is what the left try and do. So it was great to see so many people there and to feel that camaraderie, and the vlog got 2,000 views, which helped. But everything else, it was really, really good. So this is why it's so important to get the people out there on the streets and talking about these things and talking eye to eye, being in the same room or within the same proximity as people, because I mean, we're social creatures, and you can get a lot like this kind of discussion is good because you're still talking and you're still seeing someone's face, but it's not the same as looking directly in someone's eyes and hearing their voice and unfortunately, smelling their breath in some cases. But it's still, it's a lot better in terms of building connection and building that social cohesion and building a proper genuine movement when you have people standing next to each other and linking arm in arm for a united cause that is the freedom and liberty of the Australian nation and our Western culture.
Yeah, I would have said what you said, but with more vulgarity.
Great chat, guys. Thank you very much, Magnus, again. Always good to have you on. Always a pleasure. David Hiscox, don't know about you, mate. I think I might have to fire you and kick you off for next week. Other than that, chat, you would have said the same thing, but with more vulgarity, hey?
Yeah, that's it. It's my line.
Chat, everyone, viewers, thanks for listening, and really hope you enjoyed it. Next week, we have a very special guest lined up. He has confirmed, but, we're a small channel. We'll maybe reveal it later in the week who we've got for the chat next week once it's 100%. Well, it is. He has confirmed in writing, but you never know with these kind of things. But just a little bit of teaser for all the people watching now. Very, very special guest, a big YouTuber, so who has a lot to say about these kind of issues, and will definitely be a really good discussion. David Hiscox, Magnus.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
No worries. Thanks for coming on. And everyone else, see you when I see you.